My story is called Fleabite, and my name is Liz Ascott. Muffled voices were coming from downstairs. Daddy must have come back from the fair. Heather slid out of bed, put on her dressing gown and grabbed her teddy. She could hardly believe her eyes when she opened the sitting room door. Marigold was perched on the knee of a purple trouser leg. She looked like a ventriloquist doll. The ventriloquist was wearing big pointed silver shoes. The fair has come to see us now, she thought. Her father was stretched out on the settee, holding a glass of sherry. All the cushions were piled up behind him, and his feet were propped up on the arm of the chair. Her mother's face shone like a window pane washed clean by summer rain. The drinks cabinet was wide open, and all the bottles, which only ever came out at Christmas, were piled on the coffee table. Heather had never seen such a mess. "Marigold's back," said her mother. Heather stood in front of her little sister. "Sorry for losing you at the fair." Marigold didn't say anything. "This is our new friend, Mr. Tandy," Mummy said. When Daddy walked into his tent, guess who was there? Marigold. Heather crossed the small front room and sat at her mother's feet. Early next morning, Heather discovered their fairground guest lying on the settee in the sitting room. She stood over him and studied his face. His closed eyelids fluttered like butterfly wings. Underneath them, she knew he was awake. There were two orange lines running along the roots of his lashes. His coal-black hair had an orange parting, and orange hair sprouted from his ears and nose. A thin black moustache kiss-curled his bony cheeks. Draped over the back of the chair were his purple trousers and embroidered waistcoat, ready to be slipped into. He was a ginger tomcat in disguise. Mr. Tandy stretched his arms, opened his eyes and frowned up at her. "Where's Marigold?" he said. Heather didn't answer. After breakfast, they all drove back to the fair. Heather sat in the back of the car with Mr. Tandy. Marigold sat on his lap. "Have you heard of Professor Tandy's flea circus?" asked their guest. "No," they said. They hadn't. Mummy wanted to show Mr. Tandy the huge crown hanging above the city centre to celebrate Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. They circled it 3 times. White Ladies Road, the Wills Building, the Triangle, Black Boy Hill, all whizzed past in a blur. Her parents called Mr. Tandy Fernando and invited him to stay for as long as the fair was in town. They were so happy Marigold had been found and was none the worse for her adventure. Turning to clasp his hand, Mummy said, "Our home is your home, Fernando." When they got to the fair, Mr. Tandy ushered them into his tent. "Gather round," he said, bending over his flea circus. "This is my family. Senora Ruby is a dressed flea. See her cocktail parasol? The star of the show is Carlos, the high dive artiste. Up the stairs, up the steps and onto the diving board he goes. Hop, 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 and splash. Olay." Heather asked Mr. Tandy if the fleas had ginger hair like him. He regarded her coldly before continuing. "Felix is an escape artist. He gets up a coffin, and Sabrina over there climbs inside the cannon. Bang! His finger traced an arc in the air. He mopped his brow with a spotted handkerchief. The day was already getting hot. 15 fleas, all highly trained by myself with a tuning fork. Have the fleas had breakfast? Heather asked. They had a nice long drink last night, didn't they, Marigold? Then Mr. Tandy smiled. His gold teeth gleamed. Later, at home, Fernando arrived with all kinds of strange foods and 2 bottles of wine. He was going to cook. Mummy said she would do a bit of washing up. Best to get it out of the way before we eat, she said. They shut themselves in the kitchen and washed up and cooked and laughed and laughed. Heather and her father sat on deck chairs in the garden. What are the fleas for? She asked. They're bloodsuckers, said her father. Candlelight flickered over the faces of the family and their guests as they sat round the table that evening. It felt very special. Heather nibbled at a marrow flower, but Marigold refused to eat a thing. Wonderful, Mummy said. You must teach me to cook the continental way, Fernando. Daddy pushed his marrow flowers to the edge of his plate. He didn't look at all pleased to be eating continental food. Marigold had started sucking her thumb and sniffing at her old baby blanket. She wouldn't talk and didn't even want to play with Mum's wedding dress in their bedroom. Every evening, Fernando cooked his strange food, and later he helped Daddy to carry the sleepy girls up to bed. Fernando carried Marigold because he had a bad back and she was lighter. On Fernando's last evening, they all went to the circus. They ducked the elephant's trunk, shouted at the clowns, and watched the acrobats balance on galloping horses. The ringmaster cracked his whip, and the big cats clawed the air. Sitting in their ringside seats, the rank odour and smell of sawdust caught at the girls' throats. The circus was almost too exciting. When they got home, Mummy said, I'm going to cook tonight, Fernando. You go and play hide and seek with the girls in the garden. Heather was found almost as soon as the game started. She sat on a deck chair and waited while Fernando searched for Marigold in the shadows. After the meal, Fernando kissed Mummy's hand. The gazpacho was superb and the paella was sensational. Mummy's cheeks went bright red. She patted her hair and giggled. It was long past Heather and Marigold's bedtime. They were yawning like groggy dormice. Daddy carried Heather. Fernando followed Marigold in his arms. She heard Fernando whisper, "Tonight, Karina," as he tucked Marigold into bed. After counting to 20, Heather got out of bed and sat at the top of the stairs. Popping sounds and laughter were coming from the sitting room. A toast to our dear friend, her mother was saying. They kept filling their glasses and clinking and drinking. Heather couldn't hear everything they said, but she knew it was important to stay awake. When her father appeared at the bottom of the stairs, she ran along the landing and jumped into bed. That night, like a knife scoring glass, a scream cut through the silence. Heather shook Marigold awake. Through their open door, they saw Fernando slumped on the landing floor. Daddy's bedroom door flew open. What the devil's going on? Fernando peered into the girls' bedroom. I saw something in their room. Mummy appeared with a damp face cloth and began dabbing at his brow. What did it look like? A headless woman. It was horrible. Must have been champagne made you see things. My wedding dress is hanging on the wall, but that's all. Daddy frowned. What were you doing in the girl's bedroom? I thought it was the bathroom. Heather looked at him sternly. It's downstairs, you know that. Fernando snarled at her, lips drawn back, gums exposed, gold teeth glinting. Bunny shrieked, recoiled, and dropped face cloth. Daylight was filtering through the bedroom curtains when Heather heard her father drive Fernando back to the fair. Marigold's packed suitcase was discovered under her bed that evening. Fernando said I could be the flea's mummy, she said. What do you mean, darling? Her mother asked. He stroked my arms and put the fleas on them so they could drink my blood. I like the headless woman best, Heather said. She often comes to see me.